At the Miss Switzerland election in 2007, she was named one of Switzerland's most attractive women. However, 17 years later, the name Christina Joksimovic is back in the headlines, this time for sad and tragic reasons. It all began with a phone call from her children's kindergarten. Unfortunately, Christina didn't pick up her children at the end of the day, and her parents were naturally very worried about their daughter's sudden disappearance. Her husband, however, didn't seem concerned at all. Since less than 24 hours had passed since Christina's disappearance, the authorities refused to intervene. Christina's father then decided to take matters into his own hands and began searching the house. What he found was truly horrifying. Switzerland is one of the central mountainous countries in Europe, a land full of lakes, villages, and high alpine peaks, with seemingly more ski resorts and hiking trails than people. Nevertheless, more than 9 million people live here. The country's capital is Bern, and its most populous city is Zurich. If you drive about an hour north of Bern or an hour west of Zurich, you'll come to a city located directly on the border with France and Germany. This is the cozy little town of Basel. With its Gothic cathedrals, red oven houses, and the Rhine flowing through the city, it's a beautiful place to stroll around. Southwest of Basel lies a small community called Bingen. On the night of February 4th, a frightening discovery was made there that shook the entire town. It began the day before when the grandparents received a call from their granddaughter's kindergarten class. Their daughter, Christina, the former model and successful entrepreneur, had not picked up her children after school. This was very strange because she loved her children and had always been an extremely responsible mother. The situation became even more suspicious because the children's father wasn't answering the phone either. After picking up the grandchildren from kindergarten, the grandparents returned to the family's house, where they found Mark, but Christina was not there. And the most astonishing thing was that Mark seemed completely calm, as if nothing had happened. He explained that he didn't know where his wife was and offered her father a drink. For several hours, he acted as if nothing had happened and seemed quite cheerful. He chatted with Christina's parents as if it were a normal day. Then he said goodbye to the children, wished them a good night, and sent them to bed. But Christina's father didn't want to just leave and let it go. He was very concerned about his daughter's fate. Instead of simply leaving the house and going home, he decided to investigate everything thoroughly. The fact was that Christina and Mark lived in an upscale house in Bingen. It was a fairly large property with many nooks and crannies, so it took Christina's father a while to go through all the rooms and then go outside. Eventually, he reached the laundry room, which was located in the basement of the house. This room was more of an isolated bunker with thick concrete walls and a steel door that locked it. When he finally went inside, he saw several large garbage bags lying in the corner of the room. A strand of blonde hair was sticking out of one of them, which made him shudder. A terrible thought came over him. Unfortunately, the bag contained his daughter's head. After opening the bag and realizing what had happened, he ran screaming out of the house and called for help. Shortly thereafter, the police received a call from the distraught father, who reported that his daughter had been brutally murdered and dismembered. A short time later, the police arrived at the scene. It was clear from the beginning that Christina Joksimovic was dead. It was also clear that her husband was most likely responsible for her death. Christina Joksimovic was an extraordinary person who differed significantly from the average 9-to-5 worker. Her career is one of the most interesting. Her path from one success to another is inspiring. Although she was born and raised in Bingen and lived in Bern for most of her life, Christina had Serbian roots through her parents. When Christina grew up, she won Miss Northwest Switzerland in 2003 and reached the final of the Miss Switzerland election in 2007. She has also won other awards in this field. It's safe to say that she possessed classic beauty, but her talents weren't limited to that. Her potential unfolded even more after she ended her career on the catwalk. After ending her modeling career when she was a little older, Christina became self-employed. She taught other women how to model for famous fashion shows and catwalk shows. She also helped newcomers prepare for competitions and castings. But even that wasn't enough for her, because she was a versatile person. At the same time, Christina worked as an IT consultant at Google. As her business slowly got going, she described herself on her Instagram page as a fashion expert, motivator, entrepreneur, and mother. Christina offered one-on-one coaching with clients, ran masterclasses on learning to walk in heels, and supported a campaign that promoted self-confidence, femininity, and body awareness. On her website, she describes herself as a model, Google recruiter, Miss Switzerland finalist, Miss Switzerland election manager, and catwalk coach. Her clients included large companies such as Mercedes-Benz, HP, and Philips. All in all, she switched from a modeling career to a successful coaching career, inspiring the next generation of models. She has also helped Miss Switzerland candidates to follow in her footsteps, and she has coached businesswomen to confidently navigate their professional lives. In her private life, Christina was a strong woman who dedicated herself to supporting and inspiring other women. But in addition to her career as a model, entrepreneur, and consultant, Christina was also a wife and proud mother of 2 young daughters. They were named Vera Selar, who was born in 2020, and Kira Sophie, who was born in 2021. Judging from the many photos on the internet, you can see how much she loved her family. Christina was a kind and friendly person, as good-hearted as she was beautiful. From the outside, Christina seemed confident, intelligent, disciplined, and incredibly devoted to her family. But while many people have extremely positive feelings towards Christina, the same can't be said of her husband. He too had friends, and Christina loved him, but many of her loved ones saw him as a fiery, quirky man. Mark Reben is 41 years old. He's 3 years older than Christina. He's a respected leader in the field of management change in the Basel region, and he owes that primarily to his father, who essentially secured his future as a millionaire and lawyer. Before Mark became a change leader, he was an officer in the Swiss Air Force, studied at the University of St. Gallen, and then at Stanford University. In addition, Mark ran his own company that dealt with lean and agile methods and continuous improvement. On his LinkedIn page, Mark describes himself as a purpose-driven entrepreneur. In his opinion, life is about people and their interactions. Judging from his Twitter posts, Mark was an extremely boring person. His life seemed as dull as the dirt of the corporate world in which he lived. Anyway, Mark and Christine got married. Their wedding was beautiful. It took place in a castle overlooking the hills and fields. Afterwards, they had 2 wonderful daughters. On the outside, everything seemed perfect, or at least it looked that way on social media. The internet is full of pictures of them looking in love, having picnics in the park, cuddling on the floor, taking selfies at home, and vacations abroad, and they seem to be living the perfect life. But behind closed doors, things were anything but easy. Christina's friends were extremely unhappy with Mark's behavior, especially in the months leading up to her death. One of her friends recalled that they had a months-long crisis. The police were even called to their house after he became violent. According to witness statements, he was obsessed with the children and saw himself as a perfect role model, while Christina, in my opinion, was just an annoyance. Mark thought he was better than everyone else, which I saw especially at the children's birthdays, when he divided the guests into 2 sides, his family and her family, celebrating the holidays separately. But neither Christina nor her family knew how dangerous Mark's dark side was. One of his ex-girlfriends told the prosecutor that Mark had repeatedly abused her severely up until April 2016, shortly before he met Christina. Mark's former partner had already testified against him and mentioned his sinister outbursts of rage. Once, he drove a car into her leg, and another time, he threatened to throw her out of the car on the way home. He allegedly also grabbed her by the neck and pushed her against a wall. In the heat of the moment, Mark often lost control, which ended in beatings or attempted strangulation. As it turned out, Christina wasn't his first victim. Without realizing it, Christina continued to post beautiful photos on social media and was convinced that Mark was the perfect husband who would never do anything to hurt her. In old photos, she called him "my rock" and proudly announced her second pregnancy just a few months before the tragedy. She shared a photo of her family with the caption "My world." Ironically, it was Mark who destroyed that world. Despite the presumption of innocence that should apply to us, the evidence and witness statements against Mark speak for themselves. But what really happened to Christina? Although the case is still in court, we can tell you what we know so far. First, Mark claimed he didn't kill Christina. He claimed he found her in the laundry room and in a panic, tried to dispose of her body. However, when he realized that the evidence against him was too strong, he confessed to the murder, although he tried to justify it by claiming that he had acted in self-defense. He claimed that Christina had allegedly attacked him with a knife, but the forensic examiners refuted this version. The marks on her neck made it clear that she had been strangled. In addition, it turned out that while he was disposing of the body, Mark was watching YouTube videos on his iPhone but refused to give the password to access it, which likely indicates that he has something to hide. The scariest thing was that Mark only took out one organ, namely Christina's uterus, which led experts to suspect that he may have had a specific motive. In addition, he pulverized her in a high-performance blender and dissolved other body parts in a chemical solution. The body parts that were not subjected to these two gruesome methods already showed signs of blunt trauma before Christina's death. These included cuts on the cheek, under the eyebrow, and on the nose, bruises on the leg and foot, as well as on the shoulder blades and the back of her head. On her head, they found signs that strands of her hair had been torn out. Much of this gruesome act was committed in the laundry room, as traces and physical evidence at the scene showed. Mark spent several hours disposing of his wife's body before returning to his life as if nothing had happened. He even made eye contact with her father, had a drink with him, and assured him that Christina would be back soon. Christina's father was persistent and very concerned. After thoroughly searching the house, he came across his daughter's head, which was perhaps the worst find. In the time between this gruesome discovery and the arrival of the police, Christina's father was confronted by Mark, who seemed stunned that his secret had come to light so quickly. Even though it sounds unbelievable, Mark was still trying to convince Christina's parents that they would see her again at the time of his arrest, which only underscores how little remorse and reality he had. What exactly drove Mark to murder his wife remains a mystery. Without expert opinion, one can only guess. However, we have a confession, and we know from Christina's friends that she wanted to divorce Mark. That could have driven him to the brink of insanity. Surprisingly, after his arrest, Mark tried to obtain his release from pretrial detention through the Forced Measures Court in Basel. After this was rejected, he turned to the cantonal court, where he was also rejected. Finally, he turned to the Federal Supreme Court, but he had no luck there either. According to the investigation results, Mark shows signs of mental illness. Experts also find a high degree of criminal energy and a complete lack of empathy and equanimity. His attempts to cover up his wife's death and then to act as if nothing had happened in front of her father show clear sadistic and sociopathic traits. One of his friends said Mark feels no remorse. How mentally ill do you have to be to show not a bit of emotion? There's no doubt that Mark will stand trial for Christina's murder. The only question is whether he will be found guilty and what kind of sentence he will get. The death penalty is prohibited in Switzerland, but murder carries a minimum sentence of 10 years up to life imprisonment. But even with a life sentence, there's the possibility of parole after 15 years, so unfortunately, there's a chance that Mark will one day return to society. To make matters worse, Christina's family must now fight for custody of her children. Her parents and her sister have teamed up to provide the girls with a safe and loving home, but Mark's sister has also applied for custody, claiming Christina's parents are too old to care for them. This has turned into a major legal battle, with Mark's sister being supported by her millionaire father and his lawyers. This is a very tough fight for Christina's family. Mark's actions should deprive his family of any rights to the children. Christina's children deserve to grow up in a home where the truth about who their father was isn't hidden from them. In addition, Christina's family has suffered too much pain and loss. The loss of their grandchildren after the death of their daughter is too much. Christina was a strong, confident, and outstanding woman. She was always full of energy and new ideas, supported friends and family, and always had an open ear. Despite her commanding energy, she was a caring and loving mother who devoted herself entirely to her children. Now, these children will grow up without their wonderful mother. 8 months after her death, her house is completely deserted. The furniture is still inside, but the house itself is dark and empty. There are flowers in front of the door and the stairs and the walkway behind the house, where there are still children's toys and a grill, are overgrown with weeds. There are flowers on Christina's grave, a frame with her picture, 2 crosses, small stone hearts, and drawings by her daughters. It's obvious that she's greatly missed by many people. In one of the interviews, Christina's friend shared an important thought. Not always are relationships that seem perfect on the outside actually perfect. We must not only pay attention to ourselves, but also to the people around us. Unfortunately, Christina's story didn't have such a beautiful ending as such a great woman deserved. But as tragic as her fate was, her strength, love, and selflessness will live on in the memory of those who knew and loved her, in her relatives, in her children, who will grow up with the knowledge of the incredible woman who was their mother. Her story reminds us of how fragile human life is and how important it is to fight for truth, justice, and safety for those affected by domestic violence. Finally, behind closed doors, there may be things hidden that can't be seen in beautiful photos or smiling faces on social media pages. But life goes on, and despite the terrible loss, Christina's family doesn't give up. There are still people in this world who are willing to fight for the light, for the truth, and for the future of their children. Every story teaches us that love and strength can overcome even the darkest times, and despite Mark's attempts to destroy his family's life, he couldn't break the spirit of Christina, her family, and those who fight for her. This story isn't over yet because the future of her children has just begun, and although it begins with pain and loss, they are surrounded by the love and care of those who are willing to stand up for them until the end. And perhaps in a few years, when the girls are grown up, they will know the truth, but they will also remember that their mother was not only a victim but a symbol of strength, love, and beauty that no cruel act can erase from her life. Her name should be a symbol that even in the darkness, there's light to be found, the light of hope, of struggle, and of remembrance. Ultimately, it's not important how her life ended but how she lived it, leaving behind a mark that will shine in the hearts of those who knew her. Thanks for watching and take care of yourselves.